yeah, so today's story takes place in Wales in 2012, and it's about a little girl. She was only 5 years old, and her name was April Jones. Now, the family moved into the area in 2007, and about a week or two later, she was born premature by 7 weeks. She was a little fighter, and she had a form of cerebral palsy, so she really struggled to get around. Her little family consisted of a mum and dad called Paul and Coral, and she had a brother called Harley and a sister called Jasmine. And she was just so bubbly, and she ruled the roost. She loved going to the beach, and a family called her Little the Owl, and that translates to Little Devil. Not because she was dead naughty, she had a little mischievous side, which I think is really cute for a little 5-year-old girl. You know, she was the baby of the family, and she obviously had the family wrapped around the little fingers, and she was cute as a button. Now, because of some of her issues, she was in a lot of pain, and walking was quite difficult for her. So she relied a lot on a bike, as a family say, with her legs. Her bike gave her so much independence of her family, so she could get about, and she didn't have to rely on them to carry her or anything like that, which, you know, you kind of take for granted. Now, on the morning of the 1st of October 2012, the day she was taken, April had swimming lessons, and her older sister took her, and when she got home for her tea, she had spaghetti on toast, and I used to love spaghetti on toast and beans on toast and anything on toast. And her sister gave her a hug and a kiss and said, right, I'm off. Her sister was going to a youth club, and her sister said to her, I'll see you tonight, I'll tuck you in. And you know, April hugged her back and said, I love you, I'll see you later. So April said to her mum, can I go out and play? She had little friends who lived nearby, and her mum said, yeah, okay, that's fine. So April went to a little friend's house to play. Now it got to about 7:30 at night, and April still was nowhere to be seen. So her family phoned 999, her mum phones 999, and she's really panicked and hyperventilating, as you would be. And she says to a friend, can you talk? So a friend comes on the phone and says to the operator, you know, little girl, 5 years old, her name's April Jones, she's been taken, she's been kidnapped in a car. So first on the scene was DC Louise Thomas, and she said that when she got to the house it was just chaos, and as it would be, just chaos and worry. Now, there was a witness, and it was April's little friend who was 7 at the time. Now she says to the police that April got into the car happy, smiley, willingly, and that she got into the driver's side, which the police didn't really understand what she meant by this, but they soon would. Now, this case was one of the biggest searches in Britain's history. Everyone was looking for this little baby. Now, on Tuesday the 2nd of October, the search was continuing to find her. DS Andy John was brought in to be the lead investigator on the case. Now, the 7-year-old witness said to the police that the car was smaller at the front and bigger at the back, and the police thought maybe she meant maybe some kind of Land Rover or something. And later that day a call came in, and it was a man saying that there's actually a man who lives there His name's Mark Bridger, and he has access to a Land Rover, which is a left-hand drive. So the police are thinking, right, okay, we need to talk to this man. Now at the time, he was 46, he was a handyman. He had 6 kids, and his girlfriend had recently broke up with him, apparently. Now, Coddle actually said that Mark actually knew April. They'd seen Mark at the school when he was picking his girlfriend's kids up. And people actually said they seen him in the area on the Monday. So at 1:20 in the afternoon on the Tuesday, the police are sent to pick him up because they want to talk to him. Now they get to his house and it's empty, but they can really smell bleach, and the fire is blazing as well. It's not until 3:30 that afternoon when a patrol car picks him up walking along the street, and they take him to a police station 20 miles away. The police say that when he got there, that he was really calm and collected and had no emotion. His clothes were seized and he was swabbed. Now, it was also noted that 5 hours before this, so about 9:30 in the morning, the police helicopter surveillance picked him up. He was walking his dog, and they made a note of him because he didn't look up at the police helicopter. And the police said that this is really, really unusual. Usually when the helicopter's out, people are looking up. And even though in Liverpool, the police helicopter is always out, even though it's like an everyday occurrence, I automatically do still look up just to see whereabouts it's hovering. It's kind of, you just look, and he deliberately did not look. So by nearly 24 hours since April was taken, the police conduct what's called an urgent interview. Now, the danger of this is that no solicitors present, but they do this in relation to a preservation of life. They need to find out where April is. So Mark says that he doesn't know where she is, and that on the Monday night he'd been to his daughter's school because she had a parents' evening, and that he'd been drinking, and that he pulled up near his girlfriend's house. Now, his girlfriend's house is very close to where April's house was. Now, Peter Hyatt, a statement analyst, says that when a suspect admits to some criminal elements, what they're actually guilty of is usually 10 times worse. And Mark then goes on to say, I did actually see 2 little girls on bikes, and that all of a sudden he only seen one little girl at the back and the other little girl had disappeared. But then there weren't a thud with his car, but his car kind of rose up a bit. And he said that he got out the car and April was under the car. He then said that he picked it up, put it in the car, put his mouth over her mouth, which is such a weird way to phrase it. And he blew into her mouth, and that there was no pulse, and that when he went to do chest compressions, her chest was caved in. So the police at this point seize his car. He then says that he took the back road and he intended on getting her medical help, and that he looked over at her and she turned like purple, and that he had killed her. Now, he seems to remember all this, and then all of a sudden he becomes really, really vague, and he says, then I don't know what happened. I was just back at my house and she weren't there. He couldn't remember what he'd done with her. But that he knew he'd put her somewhere. So the police said that he was visibly crying tears, but that there was nothing there. There was no emotion behind the tears. The agent's interview was ended at 7:15 at night. So at this point, the police are still continuing looking for April. And a nearby petrol station, the CCTV footage from the Monday night catches his car speeding off minutes after April's been taken. So 36 hours later, following April's abduction, on the Wednesday, a press conference is held, and April's mum takes part, and it's just gut-wrenching to hear the sob. It's heartbreaking. So the police interviewing him decide to probe his little story, and they tell him that they've actually got a 7-year-old witness who contradicts his entire story. And when he's told this, he becomes really aggressive with the police, and he says stuff like it's fabricated and lies, and it can't have happened, which again is a weird way to phrase it. You'd say it did not happen. That did not happen. Not it can't have happened. He then says it happened exactly how I told you it happened. And then he says, go away and do the test on the car. At this point, I would have just slapped him. Reason 500, why I'm not a police officer. So the forensics, a man called Roderick Stewart, checks his car, and his bumper is damaged, but his bumper, it's an old issue, it's not new. And that he checks under the car, and there's no blood, there's no skin, there's no DNA, there's no clothes, there's nothing. And so again, the forensics does not back up the story either. So at this point, the police still hadn't given up hope of finding April. And there was a river right at the back where Mark's house was, and this river was completely searched. And again, there's just no signs of April anywhere. So the police, playing into what Mark's saying, take him loads of maps and say, look, can you just look at these maps in case it jogs your memory, in case you remember where you took her, where you drove, where you went, where you dropped it off. And he says that he wouldn't have buried her, and that he might have covered her from the rain, but that it was hopeless. He just could not remember what he'd done. Now, they bring in a criminal forensic psychologist at this point to try and get into the mind of Mark, and he worked on the Soham murders and the Maddie McCann disappearance. And he found that Mark used to work in an abattoir, which is a slaughterhouse, and in his home he had loads of like SAS survival books, and above his fireplace he had a gun, and they found like 2 sets of handcuffs just openly lying around his house. And this forensic psychologist says Mark lives in a fantasy world. He also says to the police, don't try to appeal to his paternal side. You know, he was a dad of 6 kids, but he says to them, there's nothing there. Like, there's no point trying to appeal or guilt trip him, because he doesn't feel it. So the police decide to ignore that and appeal to his paternal side, and they basically say stuff like, you know, you're the dad, you've got a daughter, you'd want someone to tell where, you know, where your daughter was, you'd want your daughter back. And you know, by 10 o'clock he says to the police, this is Mark, he says to the police, have you found her? And then he says, look, I'd tell you where she was if I knew where she was. I just can't remember. Can't remember. And then he says, but she's definitely not alive. Then he started crying. And basically that was it for that night. So on the Thursday, or by Thursday, 44 police forces are searching for little April. And the Prime Minister at the time, David Cameron, makes an appeal for any information, saying, you know, we need April's family need her. And the forensics are searching his house at this point, and they find tiny spots of blood in his bathroom and his living room. Now, it took 24 hours for the results to come in. The police are continuing to question Mark, but as they're waiting for the CPS, the Criminal Prosecution Service, to decide if charges can be brought. A call then comes in saying that on the Tuesday morning, Mark was actually seen carrying a black plastic bag. Now, the police don't know what happened to this bag, or where he put it or took it. They never found it in the searches. He's continuing saying that he just doesn't know where he put it. Now, the forensic psychologist is saying to the police, he has psychopathic traits. He has no guilt. There's no point trying to guilt trip him because he doesn't feel the guilt. He's not interested. And that it's just pointless trying to appeal to his better nature because he hasn't got one. Now, on Thursday, Andy John, who is leading the investigation, he arrests Mark for murder. Now, Mark thought, have they found the body? They hadn't. They also find indecent child images on his laptop. So now they know that there's a sexual motive to the crime. And by this point, the police give up hope. And, you know, they tell the family that April's gone. She's not alive. The public who are out searching are called back, and the police tell them to stop searching, and that specially trained officers are going to be continuing the search. They don't want anyone coming across bodies and stuff. And the people were broken. Up and down the country, people were like, oh my God, what has he done to this baby? At this point, there still weren't enough evidence to charge him. But Mark had created this facade that he was doing everything in his power that he could to try and remember where he put April. But it was just a game. It was just wasting time. Now, on the Friday, the search was expanded to 600 different areas. And the areas in Wales are really difficult terrain. There's like valleys and mountains and caves and mines. Really difficult to get to places. And April was really little, like she would be easy to conceal. Now, the police tell Mark that inside the car, that there was no blood, skin, hair, DNA that backed up his story, and that there was no evidence under the vehicle to back up his story that he'd hit her. So, make a note of this. Mark then says, there was no blood or traces of blood on me or here at that time. So when he picked it up from being ran over underneath his car and then put into inside the car. There was definitely no blood whatsoever at all. So the spots of blood on the bathroom wall and in the living room are compared to DNA from April's toothbrush, and unfortunately it was a match. There was blood found on the inside of Mark's fleece, like neck area, and there was April's DNA found on the inside of Mark's joggers. Now that suggests to me that maybe at some point he took his clothes off. We all know to do what. Now, by Friday, the contents of his laptop were presented to Mark. They printed out the images and were shown to him. I'm not going to detail what the images are, but the images are shown to the police. Sorry, the police show Mark the pictures. And he says that it doesn't make him feel sexual. There's nothing sexual about any of them. Now, some of these images depict various things, but some of them depict violence being done against little kids and sexual assault on little kids. And his search history, he was searching child murders and child abuse. It was clear that he was sexually interested in kids. Now, the custody clock is 96 hours and the clock was nearly up on the Friday. So there's one last interview and the police go in to challenge his entire narrative, and they present to him contradicting evidence to what he says happened. And they say to him, so we know April got into the car willingly. That there's no evidence that there was a road accident and that you hit her with the car. A body did not go under the car. There's no DNA or blood or hair or fibres or anything. That blood was found in Mark's house and DNA and blood found on his clothes. Now remember, Mark stated that there was definitely no blood on April or him when he got it into the car. She weren't bleeding. No blood. So when Mark's told this, he suddenly has an excuse for why there's blood inside his house. And he says, oh, well, if I had blood on my hands, it must have been, I must have went to the toilet and had a wee. And then when I washed my hands, I must have done that with them to dry my hands. And there must have been blood on my hands and it flew onto the wall of the bathroom. And that's why there's blood there. That explains it. And the police are like, you said that there was no blood. You specifically said that. So the police say, was April attacked inside that bathroom? And Mark says no. And then the police say, well, there's evidence that you've got a sexual interest in kids. And Mark's like, no, I haven't. And then the police are like, was you masturbating to these images? Because you were clicking on them, because obviously the timestamps are there. And the police are saying, it looks like you've been masturbating to these pictures and you've been clicking them. And he's like, no, there weren't a sexual assault on April. And then the police say, was a sharp weapon used? And he says, no. And then they say, did you suffocate April? And he says, no. And then the police say, you don't want her body to be found because it'll tell exactly what you've done to her. And Mark says, no, I apologise to Paul and Coral, and you know, I crushed the body with my car. Sticking to the story. So by this time, the CPS says that charges can be brought, and they bring 3 charges. They charge him with murder, abduction and perverting the course of justice. Now, on the 7th day since she'd been taken, so the following Monday, he's up in court and people attacked the police van. People were so angry at this man. He later appeared at Mold Crown Court and he was given a life sentence. The judge said to him, "You are a pathological liar and a paedophile." Coral said that she's at this point that she still couldn't go into April's bedroom to sort out her clothes, and that the thought of going into her bedroom knowing she is never going to be in there again, she just couldn't face. I can't imagine. It must be the worst thing ever. Now, the police have a theory that April got into the car willingly. Maybe he said, "Oh, you know me, don't you?" Maybe she recognised him, and maybe he said, "Oh, your mum asked me to pick you up," and she's gone, "Okay." And they think that maybe he took her back to his house, sexually assaulted her, murdered her, dismembered her, and then just disposed of her body in various places. Inside the fire, remember they said when the police got there that day to arrest him, to take him for questioning, that the fire was blazing. Well, inside the fire there was fragments of a child's skull. Now, I believe they couldn't be linked to April, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist. They never found a little body to this day. Apparently he's having a really bad time in prison, and I hope every day is a terrible time for him. I hope he is in fear every single day, because that little baby would have been so scared, crying for mum and dad. I can't imagine how confused and scared she must have been. Inside prison, he is being slashed. Jamie Wynn stabbed to death. There's just no excuse for these people. You know, a mum in a victim impact statement, you know, she went on to say that basically something like, we're never going to see her grow up. She's never going to bring her first boyfriend home. You know, Paul, her dad, isn't going to get to walk her down the aisle. And there's something so wrong about that. They're things that, you know, should be everyone's opportunity. And it was stolen from this family and stolen from this little girl. Thoughts and prayers are with a family. A family do a lot of campaigning and stuff, and you know, a family are just amazing. They really are. I know this has been a hard one and a sad one. Like I said, we don't know what happened to her, because that little beast will never talk. He'll be like Ian Brady. He won't talk. Anyway, stay safe, have a lovely weekend, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.